Good morning and welcome to our Sunday service. My name is Olas Karianis and I'm an aspiring UU minister and a field education student at the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood. A sincere thank you to the wonderful team who brings these Sunday services to us every week. For over a century, the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood has been gathering in community. This home for liberal faith and free thinking has held generations of seekers on their journeys, helped generations of Unitarians, Universalists, and UUs to deepen their understanding of themselves, of this world, and of their role in it. Here in this community, we celebrate each person, whatever their gender, sexual orientation, age, education, history, race, ethnicity, or economic status. We celebrate and embrace you on your spiritual journey. Unitarian Universalism doesn't teach any one thing about God or the afterlife. Ours is a faith based on shared promises and a commitment to community. We do inherit some core values from our ancestors, of course. We share a belief in the interdependent unity of all existence, of which we are a part. We share a belief that people can create a heaven on earth, that with the determination and effort, we can build a better world. We believe that we owe it to each other and to ourselves to do everything we can to make that dream reality, seeking ever after justice, for if this is your first time visiting one of our Sunday services, learn more about us, about Unitarian Universalism, or just get connected to our online communications, please fill out the Google form that will be dropped into the chat or email our office at 113cottage@gmail.com or visit our website, uuridgewood.org. While we continue to email our weekly e-blast, we are going to start moving increasingly to Realm, our congregational app and software for our communicating. If for any reason any of you are not getting our daily Zoom room schedule or our weekly e-blast, please let us know. And if you are struggling with Realm or need help figuring out how that works, please let us know. This is the last week you can fill out our Google survey. Please do so. We would love to hear from you about what offerings you would like to see this fall at USR. One final announcement, USR, along with the Unitarian Society in East Brunswick, will be sponsoring an online vigil for Ruth Bader Ginsburg tonight at 8 p.m. You can check out our Facebook page or website for details about the Zoom room. If you can't find it, please email Reverend Sarah for the info. Please join us for poetry, silence, sharing, and grieving together. If you can, please have a candle nearby that you can light. It is good to be with you this morning.
Please join us in the words for lighting the chalice. They can be found on your screen. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action as we gather together in the circle of community.
And now I invite you to take a deep breath. Many of us have been filled with emotion, minds whirring since late last night. The news of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing has affected all of us. We arrive to our time together with fear, sorrow, confusion, determination, with hearts broken open once more. Take a deep breath and let yourself be here with all you carry, aware of the changing season, aware of the turnings of the earth, aware of the passage of time, aware of the beat of your own heart. Breathe, be here, and listen. This coming week brings us the autumnal equinox. Equinox is that twice a year occurrence of perfect balance between light and dark, sun and moon. This brief moment of suspension between summer and fall, a liminal time when heat and cool breezes seem to come in equal measure, when day and night are equal partners in the creation of all that is. From this moment of balance, we will move to the season of nostalgia, of melancholy, of waiting, of remembering. From this moment of balance, we will move to the season in which first colors burst into brightness and then life goes to ground. And the quiet will come. It has perhaps begun already for many of us. This is my favorite season for all the sorrow it carries. More than any other, it reminds me that the earth has its cycles, and so do we, of life and growth and death and rebirth. It reminds me of the power and possibility and finitude of us. And in my heart settles the lesson that everything always changes. Gathered this morning, our hearts weighted with many things. We remember that truth. All things change. And still we can embrace. Still we can claim our power. And still we can live in possibility. Welcome to our service this morning.
For our opening hymn, it's "The Morning Hangs a Signal." The words will be on your screen.
Silent darkness rest. everyone. For those of you who may be new today, my name is Jean Namitz, and I'm the Director of Religious Education. So this morning, I would like to talk with you about how religious education happens here at USR. You know, during the pandemic, we have had to redefine and readapt to religious education. How would I describe it during the time of the pandemic when we are being asked to create religious education virtually? Well, this is what I would say. Religious education is experiencing community in new and different ways. And just as we have done our work in reimagining Sunday services, adult RE programs and support groups, and the work of the congregation, all via Zoom. So RE during a pandemic has required of us to adapt to virtual platforms. And adaptation in this case still relies on aligning around this core understanding of religious education. And we can come together in new and different ways to deepen community and participate in healing the world. So this photo has gone viral, and I think it really captures this particular little kindergartner is just so stressed out and so overwhelmed by Zoom that he has just had it. And I think probably all of us universally can understand this. Many of us say, oh my gosh, I've had 3 to 4 Zoom meetings. And I'm not sure we could contort our bodies like this little guy has had, but we are being tasked with imagining how to bring RE to life so that our children and youth also experience this faith community here in new and different ways. So how are we going to do that? Well, there are 4 buckets. When taken together, I want you to imagine 4 little buckets in a row, deepen relationships within our faith community for our children, our youth, and RE families. And I want to just briefly outline these 4 buckets. The first bucket is worship. And in the next coming weeks, we are going to be opening our services with some family-friendly moments for RE families. Well, what might that look like? Well, we're going to introduce family chalice lighting beginning September 27th as we welcome back the fullness of all RE families. Also, we are committed to doing justice work, and we will be doing an anti-racism component for all ages. Starting in mid-October, we will actually be charting the Underground Railroad, mapping it together, young and old, as it occurred in our regional area. And of course, we will also be experiencing seasonal celebrations. So that's our first bucket in terms of experiencing community in new and different ways. And the second one is what we traditionally think of when we think of religious education, our Sunday classes. Our curriculum for at least pre-K through grade 8 is called Soul Matters. And so instead of referring to them as classes, we're referring to them as Soul Matter circles. And they will begin the first week of October. What we're doing is we are having Zoom room circles, and that are built around our services. So pre-K through grade 1 will be meeting right after service. Grades 2 through 5 will meet right before services, and grades 6 through 8 will be meeting 12:15 to 1:15. Now, you may have noticed that the younger grades, the time has been shortened. And that's because we have learned a lot about best practices and what to do in Zoom rooms, as opposed to the photo of the kindergartner who was just had it with the length of time. So for our younger grades, we're looking at 35, 40 minutes for check-in. We're also exploring offering OWL in person, and that's grades 8 through 9. And we will be letting parents know if that's a go. And finally, we have a youth group, our Second Sundays youth group, grades 9 through 12. They recently met in person, socially distanced at Jersey Mike's to plan their year of in-person and Zoom activities. So we're on our third bucket that contributes to religious education and creating community in new and different ways, are home activities. Well, we've always known that religious education primarily takes place in the home, as parents are the primary religious educators of their children. And we will be providing parents the resources to create sacred time with everyday activities, such as mealtime, bedtime, car time, and also how to create sacred space for family chalice lighting. And finally, our fourth bucket is congregational and intra-congregational activities. We'll be starting up a reading group that pairs young readers with volunteers from the congregation, taking turns reading to each other and establishing a rapport. We will also be having a social once a month with other congregations around the nation that are UU grades 6 through 8 via Zoom. We have 2 groups of Dungeons and Dragons for 4th to 5th graders. We have a couple more spots if anyone is interested. And I would say that in our Soul Matter circles, for the first time, I think, in our history, we are pairing with 2 other congregations so that our children will be meeting children, other UU children from the local area. We're pairing with CUC in Paramus, and we're also pairing with All Souls in New York City, which is very exciting. So we know the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. And so it is true in a faith community like USR. We recently reimagined the RE committee into a RE council, a larger body tasked with adapting RE virtually and rolling it out. And the RE council and I anticipate that these 4 buckets work together to providing different ways of experiencing community for our children, youth, and our RE families. So I want to extend a warm welcome to our RE families that are coming back to Sunday services, to our Soul Matter circles, and to different activities that strengthen our ties to one another, and they remind us why we gather together. Thank you, everybody.
Good morning. I'm Rose Castillo-Leon, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood. I add my welcome to you all. It is wonderful to be with you. Every Sunday that we gather, we ask for an offering to support the work of this congregation. Our mission statement is to grow in mind and spirit, to act with love for justice, and to transform ourselves and the world. This congregational year will be a challenging one as we work to support each other through the continued pandemic, as our nation faces challenges in our political sphere, and as we look toward an uncertain future. We are grateful for the way you have shown up and continue to show up with your hearts and minds open, with your helping hands ready, and with your generous offerings, ensuring that the mission and work of this congregation can continue. We also know that in this moment, there are among us those who are unable to financially support the congregation and instead find themselves in need of support. If that is you, please let us know. Please let us help. Reach out to Reverend Sarah, the office, the caring teams, or any member of the board, including myself. Now on the screen, you will see the instructions on how to give. Please give generously. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Testamento de Otoño,
Autumn Testament,
por Pablo Neruda.
translated by Alistair Reed.
Entre morir y no morir, me decidí por la guitarra, y en esta intensa profesión mi corazón no tiene tregua, porque donde menos me esperan, yo llegaré con mi equipaje a cosechar el primer vino en los sombreros del otoño.
Between dying and not dying, I picked on the guitar, and in that dedication, my heart takes no respite. For where I'm least expected, I turn up with my stuff to gather the first wine in the sombreros of autumn.
Entraré si cierran la puerta, y si me reciben me voy. No soy de aquellos navegantes que se extravían en el hielo. Yo me acomodo como el viento, con las hojas más amarillas, con los capítulos caídos de los ojos de las estatuas. Y si en alguna parte descanso, es en la propia nuez del fuego, en lo que palpita y crepita y luego viaja sin destino.
If they close the door, I'll go in. If they greet me, I'll be off. I'm not one of those sailors who flounder about on the ice. I'm adaptable as the wind is, with the yellowest leaves, with the fallen histories in the eyes of statues. And if I come to rest anywhere, it's in the nub of the fire, the throbbing, crackling part that flies off to nowhere.
Pero yo recogí con creces la bondad de amigos y ajenos. Me recibía la bondad por donde pasé caminando y la encontré por todas partes como un corazón repartido.
But I've had in abundance the bounty of friends and strangers. I found generosity where my ways took me, and I found it everywhere, like a shared out heart.
En todas partes recogí la miel que devoran los osos, la sumergida primavera, el tesoro del elefante. Y eso se lo debo a los míos, a mis parientes cristalinos. El pueblo me identificó y nunca dejé de ser pueblo. Tuve en la palma de la mano el mundo con sus archipiélagos, y como soy irrenunciable, no renuncié a mi corazón, a las ostras ni a las estrellas.
Everywhere I gathered the honey that bears devour, the secret stirrings of spring, the treasure of the elephants, and that I leave to my own ones, the clear stream of my family. The people defined me, and I never stopped being one of them. I held in the palm of my hand the world with its archipelagos, and since I can't be denied, I never denied my heart, or oysters, or stars.
De tantas veces que he nacido tengo una experiencia salobre como criatura del mar, con celestiales atavismos y con destinación terrestre. Y así me muevo sin saber a qué mundo voy a volver o si voy a seguir viviendo. Mientras se resuelvan las cosas, aquí dejé mi testimonio, mi navegante extravagario, para que leyéndolo mucho nadie pudiera aprender nada, sino el movimiento perpetuo de un hombre claro y confundido, de un hombre lluvioso y alegre, enérgico y otoño abundo.
From having been born so often, I have salty experience, like creatures of the sea, with a passion for stars, and an earthy destination. And so I move without knowing to which world I'll be returning, or if I'll go on living. While things are settling down, here I've left my testament, my shifting extravagaria, so whoever goes on reading it will never take in anything except the constant moving of a clear and bewildered man, a man rainy and happy, lively and autumn-minded.
Y ahora detrás de esta hoja me voy y no desaparezco. Daré un salto en la transparencia como un nadador del cielo y luego volveré a crecer hasta ser tan pequeño un día que el viento me llevará y no sabré cómo me llamó y no seré cuando despierte. Entonces cantaré en silencio.
And now I'm going behind this page, but not disappearing. I'll dive into clear air like a swimmer in the sky, and then get back to growing, till one day I'm so small that the wind will take me away, and I won't know my own name, and I won't be there when I wake. Then I will sing in the silence.
This is a hard morning. Perhaps even more than usual, our time in quiet contemplation and care for one another matters. Please join me now as we bear witness to each other's celebrations and pains. If you are inclined, take a moment to write into the chat any personally significant joys or sorrows you wish to share, remembering only to share your own or those that you have explicit permission to share in this space. And then please take a deep breath. Find as comfortable a position as you can for your body. And breathe. Slowly in through your nose. Exhaling slowly out through your mouth. Focus on the air as it moves in and out of your body. Try to breathe slowly and evenly. And let your body relax. Roll your shoulders back. Unclench your jaw. Let your muscles release. As your body calms, bring your whole self to stillness. Breathe and listen to the voice of your own heart. Breathe and listen to the whispers of your own soul. This morning we hold sorrow at the shooting in Rochester that left 2 dead and many injured. May those affected know moments of solace and peace. And this morning we grieve with our nation for the loss of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a stalwart champion for justice, a brilliant legal mind, a sharp wit, an example for generations, and a human with beloved family and friends. Her death cuts deep even for those of us who would never have met her, leaving a hole in our nation's leadership and taking with her the sense of safety she provided to many of us. Her death makes vulnerable to the values of exclusion and meanness one of the most important parts of our governmental system. For many of us, Justice Ginsburg's death brings not only sorrow, but fear. Fear about what a replacement might be and what rights might be rolled back. If a justice is confirmed who doesn't share Ginsburg's commitment to reason and progress and liberation. Death at 87 is not entirely unexpected, but it was too soon. And we are left needing to adapt to a new reality. We are left needing to find a way forward despite the heartbreak and fear. Or perhaps, better said, we need to find a way to harness that heartbreak and fear and move forward honoring the legacy of Justice Ginsburg. She did not adapt herself to oppression and limitation and injustice, and nor should we. We adjust to the new future and to the unexpected calling we now must answer to ensure a righteous, consistent, and fair process. We acknowledge our sorrow and fear so present with us this morning. May we all know safe spaces to share our hearts, and may we be strengthened in our resolve to honor her legacy with our own conscious-driven, justice-seeking lives. Take a deep breath. And Jan expresses gratitude to Jeannie and the ARI community here at USR for the exciting and adaptive plans going forward. Into our lives come sadness and joy. Sometimes, though rarely, they are in equal measure, balanced like the equinox. More often, we experience seasons marked more by one or by the other, a season of grieving or of celebrating. This is itself both a joy and a sorrow. The knowledge that always into our human lives will come grief can weigh on our hearts. But the knowledge that we shall pass into new seasons is also a comfort. Comfort we are reminded of now as we lean toward fall. Whether this moment is for you marked by sorrow or joy, may the coolness of autumn bring you opportunities to warm yourself among loved ones. May the darkness that comes bring you chances to uncover and listen to your own small voice within. May the cycles that turn us ever around bring you hope and the possibilities of the future. And may you step into autumn, aware that you are held in love by a community of caring. So may it be. Our second reading this morning is by the poet Ellen Bass, and it's titled, "The Thing Is." To love life, to love it even when you have no stomach for it, and everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, your throat filled with the silt of it. When grief sits with you, its tropical heat thickening the air, heavy as water, more fit for gills than lungs. When grief weights you down like your own flesh, only more of it, an obesity of grief, you think, how can a body withstand this? Then you hold life like a face between your palms, a plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes. And you say, yes, I will take you. I will love you again. 19 years ago, in early September, I arrived in Florence, Italy to spend a semester making art. My ever practical mother had advised me not to major in art in college, to consider it a hobby. In fairness, she probably was not wrong with that bit of advice. But we had agreed that spending a semester in Italy drawing, sculpting, throwing pots on the wheel would be a reasonable choice. My time in Florence would have been memorable under any circumstances, but it was made especially so by the occurrence of September 11, just days after we arrived. I can remember very clearly calling my dad, who at first was somewhat nonchalant, those precious moments when many of us thought there must be some horrible mistake, and then crossing the street to the tiny cheese shop, the only place we knew had a television, and watching it unfold live. As you might imagine, for us students abroad, the question arose quickly, should we go home? My parents asked me to stay. There was nothing for me to do at home, and the risks were still unknown. I stayed, but as you might imagine, the events of that morning altered my experience. I already had a special relationship to autumn. Growing up, my grandmother, who had Alzheimer's, had been placed into a care facility near her family's generations-old farm. In my memory, every time we visited, it was fall, and the leaves were turning. Before long, my brother and I stopped going into my grandmother's room. Her fading memory was more than we were able to handle. Sometimes we would trail behind her and my mother if they made it out for a walk. But the memory that most stands out is the fall weekend that my mother and father went inside my grandmother's room and my brother and I waited on the grounds. I remember tall and thick trees. I remember thinking they must have been very old, though perhaps they simply seemed large to this city kid. That weekend, with the leaves turning and beginning to fall, my brother and I went around collecting acorns for the squirrels, piling them into stacks a foot or more high, pyramids, so the animals would have less work to do for the coming winter. We had a feeling that we were doing something good. We were helping. There was nothing we could do to help my mother in her grief or my grandmother in her illness, but the squirrels, maybe we could help them. From the time I was small, autumn was for introspection, for grieving, for melancholy and nostalgia, for apple picking and hot cocoa, for Thanksgiving and family and bittersweet memories. Autumn was a precious time. I took a sculpture class that semester abroad. I had sculpted in clay in high school, but in this class, I stretched myself into other materials. The project that came from my deepest heart that Florentine autumn was made of wood and copper and fishing line. It was a wooden frame of a cube assembled without nails, 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot. Inside, strung on fishing line so thin you could barely see it, were more than a dozen copper leaves, each one different in shape, color, and size. Peter, the professor's assistant, had bought the wood for me from a lumber yard. The line came from the studio, and so did the copper that was once part of an Italian plumbing system. The rusting pipe had been cut in two for me, and I then spent many an afternoon pounding the half cylinders into submission. In this case, submission meant hammering the greening pipe that once transported who knows what under the city of Florence, thin enough and flat enough to cut out the shapes of leaves. The studio was set up inside an old palazzo, at the center of which was a partially tented Baroque courtyard. As the light would fade beyond the studio, I would shape leaf after leaf. It is, I realize, a trite thing to say, but the light is different in Italy. I would sit on the high stools, polish the leaves, each one to a slightly different hue than the others. The punch of a hole, some drilling in the white painted cube frame, stringing the leaves like so many lights, and my project was done. The assignment had been to unite a geometric shape and some image of nature. We were not required to explain our project or to probe its meaning. I probably wouldn't have been able to at the time. They say Michelangelo believed the marble blocks he began with already contained a sculpture that only awaited uncovering. He had but to excavate what was already there, what he in his genius could see. I claim no genius, but this project was the first and perhaps only that ever felt to me that it had form before I gave it form. The only one that felt like an uncovering of creation. It wouldn't be until a few years later, as I shared a photo of that piece in a divinity school class, that I understood, with some prodding from my peers, what was rising from my heart in the uncovering of that work. And it seemed so obvious. Boxing leaves is an attempt to stop time, to halt the natural cycle, to stop the winter from coming, to stop the emptiness from entering the sky and my grandmother's eyes, to stop bodies midair, to stop death. My box of leaves was my way of railing against change and time and the inevitability of it all. It was an attempt to exercise control where I had none. 19 years have gone by. I still sometimes long to have control. I've never liked change. I cried as a child when my parents moved a lamp out of my room. But I think I've grown more accustomed to the changes we can predict, at least. The cycles of the seasons, the march of birthdays, the growing now of my own children, even death. This is not to say I don't grieve or long for more time or worry, but these natural changes that we humans manage through ritual and markings and tears and laughter, these are easier for me than they used to be. In an essay on nature, Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "We cannot bandy words with nature or deal with her as we deal with persons. If we measure our individual forces against hers, we may easily feel as if we were the sport of an insuperable destiny. But if, instead of identifying ourselves with the work, we feel that the soul of the workman streams through us, we shall find the peace of the morning dwelling first in our hearts, and the fathomless powers of gravity and chemistry, and over them of life, pre-existing within us in their highest form." There are changes we cannot stop, changes that we can count on coming again and again each year. These are changes that, in truth, we are part of because we are part of the natural world that moves and alters. Emerson urges us to see ourselves not as impacted by some external force that determines our destiny, but as part of the work itself, part of the force. He and many others urge us to see ourselves not as creations, but as participatory creators in an ongoing unfolding. Learning to let go, to not box the leaves, to let life unfold, that is a lifelong lesson for many of us, one we learn over and over and over again. Stopping, starting, resisting, relearning, how to let go, how to embrace the permanence of change and the impermanence of ourselves, even as we live meaningfully, deeply engaged and loving lives. Our first reading this morning, selections from the Pablo Neruda poem Autumn Testament, helps teach this lesson. It's an ode to autumn, to love, to death, to life. The poem is longer than what was shared. I urge you to read it in its entirety. There are many striking and precious moments as Neruda speaks of his life, his passion, and his farewell. Toward the end, he writes, "From having been born so often, I have salty experience like creatures of the sea, with a passion for stars and an earthy destination. And so I move without knowing to which world I'll be returning or if I'll go on living. While things are settling down, here I've left my testament, my shifting extravaganza. So whoever goes on reading it will never take in anything except the constant moving of a clear and bewildered man, a man rainy and happy, lively and autumn-minded. Neruda captures this sense of moving, of changing, of letting go on the wind and being carried. Constant moving, not always sure of the destination. His Autumn Testament encourages us to see our lives in cycles of birth and death and rebirth, in cycles of time and change where the constant is love and determination, and what helps us survive is our ability to let go, to adapt, to bend. Because there are two changes that we cannot predict, changes that do not come to us each season marked on the calendar with dates and times, or marked in our homes and houses of faith with celebrations and ceremonies. There are unexpected changes. A life taken too soon by violence, the eruption of a pandemic that alters nearly everything about the way we live, a shift in our political landscape that brings us to our knees with worry over the future. I believe that one of the ways we humans learn and relearn the inevitability of change beyond our control is by marking special time, practicing our encounters with change. Religions, communities, peoples around the world have ways of marking the inevitable natural cycles. We align our holy days often with harvests or times of sowing, with the equinox or the solstice, with the renewal of springtime or the onset of winter. We have rituals and actions that accompany our responses to change. This weekend and into the next, our Jewish friends and family, and many of us ourselves, are celebrating the high holy days, Rosh Hashanah, the days of awe, and Yom Kipper, which we'll talk about next weekend. The rituals and prayers and celebrations of this time in the Jewish liturgical cycle are ways of counting the march of days. They mark the turning of the year. A new year begins and an opportunity is given to change ourselves, to make things right, to begin again. Our human rituals that we engage in each year help us to prepare to embrace the changes that come unexpectedly. Just over 6 months ago, we all changed our lives radically in response to the coronavirus pandemic. We were asked to adapt to a new reality. Not really asked. We were made to submit quickly to a new reality, forging a way forward with massive change and uncertainty, reshaping and reforming how we are in the world. For many of us, that is being brought home now more than ever. Fall is often seen as a time of new beginnings. The school year defines many of our rhythms even long after we ourselves are not in school. And so here we stand, beginning in ways completely different than we ever have before. Working remotely, schooling remotely, distant from friends and family, and we are aware that the coming months and the new seasons will make it harder and harder to bear. None of us signed up for this. None of us would have chosen this. It's been a change we have been forced to meet. And I don't know about you, but there are times in the face of this change that my heart wants to not just box leaves, but to throw them back up onto the tree. There are times that I just want to go back before COVID, back to the predictability of my schedule and my life, back to a time when I thought I would be able to raise my children in a certain way. But of course, we can no more do so than we can stop the autumn from coming. I read a piece a couple days ago in The Atlantic titled "How We Survive the Winter" by James Hamblin. In it, Hamblin writes about practical measures we as individuals and the US as a nation can take. Continuing to distance and mask, buying warm winter clothes and considering them part of our pandemic defense arsenal, ramping up our testing and tracing, upgrading our ventilation everywhere, and more. But before he gets into recommending any of those practical responses, Hamblin begins with two vital things: accept reality and plan for more shutdowns. Essentially, accept that we now live with a level of uncertainty that isn't going to change anytime soon, and don't assume that steps forward will necessarily stick. If we can't adapt our minds to this new truth of shifting ground and 2 steps forward, 1 step back, we are likely to prolong it and suffer more loss. The lesson in the natural changes of which we are a part is that everything changes. And it's all in how we react and adapt. If we dig in our heels and refuse to accept what is now, we'll fail to move forward. If we react as individuals, caring only for our own survival or success, we will fail. But if we find ways to respond that take into account all of us, that adapt not only in action, but in spirit and mind, then we have a chance at stepping into a brighter future. Pablo Neruda ends his poem in this way. And now I'm going beyond this page, but not disappearing. I'll dive into clear air like a swimmer in the sky, and then get back to growing, till one day I'm so small that the wind will take me away, and I won't know my own name, and I won't be there when I wake. Then I will sing in the silence. Here he speaks to that ultimate change, death. Natural, and yet often unexpected. Throughout the pandemic, we have been reminded of this final change we will all experience. Our nation has reached 200,000 deaths from COVID, a staggering number. We've all been touched in some way by this pandemic and its exacting price. Whether we've had to contend with our own illness or the death of a friend or family member, or whether we have comforted others who have lost, we have all grieved and remembered. That image in singing in the silence feels more potent to me now, as we sing into the silence of our own homes. We have faced this ultimate change in ways personal and intimate and in ways communal. Each of us has faced it. September 11th, the loss of Black life from police violence, the death of a stalwart champion for justice like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Our own lives follow the rhythm of leaves, growing, changing, and inevitably falling from the tree. Yet in our time here, if we can learn to embrace and offer gratitude for life and the loss that inevitably comes with it, if we can learn to celebrate what is, if we can learn to grieve what was and then step into what must be, we may find that the control we so long to exert is better replaced by conscious and conscientious communal adaptation that participates in creating a better future. We adapt to the things we cannot change, doing our best to embrace them, whether they are natural and expected or unexpected and human-made. And then we work like hell to change the things that can be changed, using love and compassion as our guide on our quest for liberation and freedom. That's where I am these days. I may still long to box leaves, but instead I coach myself and I allow others to coach me to meet the world as it is. Ellen Bass's poem offers us all a way to do this. Heartbroken, the world a mess, grief weighing us down. Still, she says to us, then you hold life like a face between your palms, a plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes, and you say, yes, I will take you. I will love you again. Yes, life, I will take you. I will love you again. May all our yeses, whether tentative or full-throated or tear-filled, resound this morning and all the days of our lives. So may it be.
Please join us in our closing hymn, Mother Earth, Beloved Garden. love and give. Raging whirlwind, whispered breezes, violent gale and gentle cloud. With the blade as sharp as morning east, we ask you be here now. Lover, spirit, intuition, in the center of our souls. In your love we find relation, all connected we are whole. Timeless mystery, quiet conscience, deepest values echo inside. With the drum and with the cauldron, this we ask you be our guide.
Please join us in the words for extinguishing the chalice. They can be found on your screen. We extinguish the flame, but may the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action burn bright in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you all for being with us this morning. We'll take a moment or two to grab a coffee or something to eat, and then we'll reconvene for our breakout rooms. I'll adjust the settings so you can unmute and say good morning to each other. That should work. I hope.
You're unmuted.
Hello, hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. So nice to see community.
Good morning.
Morning. What a beautiful day yesterday
And today.
and today.
And today.
How did that happen? There we go.
Hi,
Nice to see
Minnie.
you.
Hey, hey.
Hi.
No.
Oh, thank you all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Helen, Lindsay.
Yes, I was
Hi,
delighted to
Helen.
see Helen.
Helen.
I think I saw Nancy Petrie was listening.
Yeah, she was.
How are you, Helen?
Hope Nancy's
Helen,
still
I'm
there.
going to invite you to unmute, and then you just click yes, Helen. It should. Oh, I want to make sure she gets unmuted.
Yay!
Here she is.
Ah! Good morning, Helen.
Hi,
Good
Helen.
morning.
Hi, Dee.
Helen.
You see Helen?
Yeah, Helen's right
Hi,
here.
Better.
There we go. Okay.